In the resources that I prepared last year that I posted, I had sort of a general how to accelerate. But the thing with acceleration is that there's just so many different factors that you have to adjust to get a nice, smooth, powerful acceleration. So I wanted to go through a few of them as quickly as I can, or this could be a very long video. So the first factor that I wanted to consider is your angle above or below close hauled. So if close hauled is that angle, if you're starting here, there's sail flapping, you're going to have to scull down below close hauled. So if you scull right to close hauled, then when you flatten the boat, you'll be driven up past close hauled, and then you'll have to steer back down again, which is not as smooth as sculling a little bit below close hauled and then flattening so that the turn from the flatten brings you back up to your close hauled course. So if you are pointing head to wind, this could be quite a powerful scull, 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 scull. And some sailors are also heeling to windward to help propel them down. That only works if the sail is drawing, if the sail is creating lift. If the sail is totally dragging, heeling to windward could actually be counterproductive. So as soon as the sail starts to fill, you could then heel to windward to help you bear off. And that could make it so that you are less likely to break the rule that says that you're only allowed to scull too close hauled, not below. So you could scull from this angle to this angle, and then as the sail starts to fill, you could heel to windward to turn down below close hauled. But then you have to get from heeling to windward all the way to heeling to leeward before flattening and accelerating. So windward heel makes the acceleration more legal, and it could be faster if you're starting to accelerate as you get that windward heel, but it adds a much higher level of difficulty. So what most people are doing is sculling down below close hauled, but just far enough below close hauled that one nice acceleration, the off-center force from the acceleration pushes you right up to your desired close hauled course. So the acceleration is going to be quite different if you're head to wind versus just a little bit above close hauled. And then that's going to be very different from if you're significantly below close hauled. So sometimes you sit well below close hauled on the start line if you're trying to get someone to not to steal your hole to leeward. So let's say there's another boat over here, and then there's a boat coming in to steal your space to leeward. Sometimes you'll turn way down, and there's no room there. There's no room there, and that doesn't actually get you any rights. Other than that, when this boat establishes overlap, you then are allowed room to keep clear for a longer period of time, but it mostly just creates a visual block here. This boat would have to really have it in for you or be quite desperate, and then so maybe they could sail over here and then head straight up into the wind to get your spot. But anyway, so there are some reasons why you might accelerate from pointing downwind or pointing sort of half wind. So when you do that, as you sheet in, you probably also want some leeward heel to facilitate that turn, to help you turn as you're sheeting in. It depends on the wind strength, how much you need. And as you're starting to fill that sail and flatten the boat is going to start accelerating. And so this can be a very powerful way to accelerate. The only reason that we don't always do this is because it's usually too crowded on the start line. If there's someone not starting like this, they can totally block your way. And if this boat is okay, has a decent head-to-wind acceleration skills, so they can turn down to this angle and just start sailing, this boat, a few seconds later, is going to be completely lee-bowed. So being able to accelerate from head to wind, down below close hauled, flatten, accelerate, gives you an advantage over a windward boat who has to reach along the line and then head up to accelerate. If there's no one else around, this could be a good move. Accelerate from below close hauled. It's just not practical in the large laser fleets. But if you start above close hauled, you actually do have to get a little bit below close hauled before you can accelerate. So that's the first two there. And then we've already started talking a little bit about speed and flow. If you accelerate from below close hauled, the boat starts speeding up even before you really hike and press the boat flat. And that's really nice because the centerboard works a lot better as there gets more and more flow of water along it. So the water comes over the centerboard, not quite like that. More like that. So because the boat is pressing sideways and sliding sideways a little bit, so the flow on the centerboard isn't straight down. It's a little off to the side. And then for those of you who think about airplanes, this does look a little bit like an airplane wing. And yes, it creates a little bit of lift when it starts working the centerboard. So when you get flow on the centerboard, it's not just sideways resistance, it's actually also lift that you generate, which is why it's so much more effective to have a centerboard that is moving forwards than a centerboard that is just sitting in the water, drifting sideways, because the water sort of just, it doesn't create any lift. It just does these vortexes as the boat slides awkwardly sideways. So starting speed, if you're able to get below close haul, maybe do that little pump to windward, which also accelerates you. If there's any way to start building speed before the real acceleration, and we'll get to this later, but another way to do that is to set up on the start line back here. This boat thinks they're a genius because they know exactly where the line is, but a few seconds after the start, if these boats also know where the line is, these guys are going to be, I don't know how that boat got up there, but anyway, maybe I'll make this boat be that boat. This boat can accelerate, but you just can't compete with a boat that has flow on their foil already. Okay, so I'll start that again. These boats know where the line is. This boat knows where the line is, but he sets up right on the line. Then these boats accelerate and hit the line just at go. This boat bears off, flattens the boat, and accelerates. These boats continue with their momentum and continue with their centerboards that are working nicely. This boat has to build the flow on their centerboard from scratch. So don't start ahead of the fleet when you're not being forced to. You want to just be the first person to pull the trigger, and a better strategy would be to start just a little bit bow out, a little bit bow ahead of these boats, and then accelerate and hit the line with clean air. So that allows you to build flow on the centerboard. What that does is it gives you better pointing, so you're not drifting sideways as much. You're tracking straight forward more, And if you roll the boat and flatten, you can press harder in the flatten, getting a bigger boost right at the end there. But again, if all the other boats are lining up right next to the start line, even if there's a little gap here, usually doesn't work to line up here, because you go to accelerate, these boats also go to accelerate, and you're in dirty wind, and it's hard, very, very hard to get from here to here. So usually, if everyone else is lined up on the start line, you also have to line up on the start line. So again, it's better to start back, get a little bit of speed, and then accelerate up to full speed or even past a normal full speed. Better to do that than to sit right on the line and try to go from 0 to 100 with no runway. But you need to practice both skills, because this is very common in a laser fleet or an opti fleet, or almost any high-level fleet, even the skiffs, who would really love to have a lot of flow on their foils. They sit right near the start line at a high level. Maybe I will just skip here. So we talked about starting speed and flow, and how you can press harder if you have more flow, and you also don't drift as far. So you have to find a way to build that flow. That ties in with distance to the start line. I think I'll skip to distance to the boat to leeward here, because we already sort of talked about that over here. If you have distance to the boat to leeward, and I think I talked about this in our other debrief, you could bear off, get a whole bunch of flow on your centerboard, head up, and shoot out. But if you end up right here on the leeward boat, even if because of your little bear away you end up right here, you have no margin for error on the upwind. If anything goes wrong, if this boat does some good technique, and they sort of gain, 30, 60 centimeters on you, suddenly you're in a lee bow position and you're going to be drifting off, or you're going to have to tack away. So one of the best Canadian fin sailors that we've had recently, Chris Cook, he would say you want to have a hole to leeward so that you don't have to use it. So even if you have a hole to leeward, if you're really good at accelerating, and maybe you have more space to the line than this, like maybe the line is up here, you want to bear off a little bit and accelerate, sort of like we were talking before, so that on the upwind you have all of this gap. If something goes wrong, there's a big set of nasty waves that hit you but don't hit that boat. You can bear off a bit and you're still happy. If there is a left-hand shift, you don't end up immediately getting lee bowed. So that hole to leeward, it's better to not have to use it. Now, if you do have a boat directly to leeward, it goes just into who has done more of these practice accelerations, right? So it's good to just do this over and over again, starting from, this is the hardest situation. You also want to practice starting a bit more bow down, but if you can bear away, get flow starting to build on the centerboard, and then press the rest of the way boat flat, press the boat the rest of the way flat, better than the boat to leeward of you, then you get a gap to leeward. If the boat to leeward is better than you, at that you end up here. And then you have to tack, or you probably can't tack because it's a busy start and you're just in trouble. This boat's going to get flushed out really quick. So that's mostly about feel. What do I mean by feel? Telling how grippy the centerboard is, how much flow you have on it, how hard you can press without just sliding sideways. But then it also comes into the sail controls. If you don't have enough kicker, when you press the boat flat, the top of the sail just twists out. Whereas if you have a lot of kicker, you have something really to press hard against up in the air. And that's what drives the boat forward. So more kicker lets you press the boat flatter, harder, get going faster, but it also makes it harder to scull away from the wind because the kicker always wants to round you back up. So the more kicker you have, the more you need to bear off past close hauled before you accelerate, especially in heavy wind. So the windier it is, the more kicker you need, but both heavier wind and more kicker make it so that you have to bear off below close hauled further, because when you accelerate, you're going to come back up. You're going to be forced back up by the hook of the back of the sail, by the hook of the leech. The other thing that wind strength does, other than keep you above close hauled, is it makes heeling the boat useless. So if you have enough power in the wind, if it's windy enough that you can hike 100%, and you still need to depower the sail, then there's no point in adding extra heel. If you heel a whole bunch and then hike 100%, the only way you can get the boat flat is by easing the sail. So the windier it is, the less you heel the boat. In very light wind, if you're not going to hit the boat to leeward, you can almost capsize the boat. The limiting factor becomes the rudder comes out of the water, and then you're not really as effective. So you can heel the boat like crazy in light wind, and then you can press really hard on the sail to get it flat, or on the boat to get it flat. And then right at the end, you never want to over flatten the boat, because then you lose the flow as you reorient the boat to its normal sailing position. So you can start off pressing really hard and then finish really gently. And then that beginning that's really hard is going to be much more effective if you're already moving forwards a little bit through the water. If you have to do this from still, then it's really a fine-tune sort of trying to tell at what point in the flatten you really have enough flow on the centerboard that it grips the water. But anyway, so yeah, light wind, lots of heel, very heavy wind, no heel at all. I mean, you can get maybe 5-10 degrees, but basically it's just about hitting the hiking strap really hard and then sheeting accurately. So you give it the most hiking moment that you can, and then you sheet so that is the perfect amount to get the boat flat going fast. And then as you get up to your full speed for that wind strength, you sheet the sail in more and more and more. So that's with a whole bunch of kicker on. In the lighter wind, you can also finish your acceleration if you don't think that you've accelerated to the boat's full speed. If this is the traveler block, you finish the acceleration with your boom off the corner, and then slowly pull it in until you're at full speed. Assuming that full speed, you're sitting on the edge of the boat. If you're not sitting, well, that's a terrible person, sorry. If you're not sitting on the edge of the boat, if you have to sit further in than the edge of the boat because it's so light, then you never do pull the boom block to block. So that's another part of accelerating there. So with wind strength, often comes waves. With waves, you're going to have a looser out haul. You may have to do this, straighten the mast by sheeting the boom up. And then only once you're at full speed do you pull it tight. And then if you hit a wave, you may have to loosen that off again to power up again. So that's just waves, more about managing power. Seeing a nasty wave coming. If it is, then you want to bear off further away from the wind. If you're pointed straight at the wave, you slam. And that's the same as when you're sailing upwind normally. But before the start, if you see a wave coming just as you're accelerating, you're not going to want to accelerate into it, slam into the next wave and stop. You're going to want to turn way off the wind so that you only half slam, let the boat roll, and then hopefully press forwards in the trough, stay low until the wave set's gone, then sheet in and head up to the highest course that you're going to get. So bigger gap to leeward would also help in wavy conditions if you have that luxury. We already talked a little bit about distance the boat to leeward. That helps you bear off, get some flow, wind strength, waves. Kicker, so if you have a lot of kicker, you have to bear off a little bit further, but you can press harder because your sail doesn't just open and spill the wind out. In heavy air, getting your upwind amount of kicker on before the start, but like maybe 15 seconds before the start, is really effective, but it also totally changes the handling of the boat. So you want to practice how it feels to have almost upwind or upwind amount of kicker when you're not moving. You end up getting stuck in irons, fast i vinda. I'll just skip to, we talked a little bit about amount of heel, which goes with wind strength. If you don't have a lot of heel in light wind, that doesn't mean that you can over flatten the boat and then release it. If you don't have a lot of heel, you only get to use the amount of heel you have. So it's very important to get lots of heel if it's not hiking conditions. More heel, the less wind there is. But if you don't get that heel, you can't make up for it by over flattening the boat, because then you get a nice acceleration, but then you decelerate as you reset. So it's better to just use the acceleration you have and transition smoothly into full speed. Then you're going to be accelerating more slowly so you can keep some power until you feel like you're at full speed if you didn't get that desired amount of heel in the light wind. Outhaul and Cunningham, if your sail's very powered up, it's tempting that'll sort of push you a little bit above close hauled. It's like a milder version of having too much kicker on. Can create a bit more leech hook. That's all I wanted to say about that. I guess the other thing is if you have very loose outhaul pre-start, that creates a lot of drag in the sail. The battens really flap. And so if you're sitting like this with a loose outhaul, you're going to fall off the wind because the sail's pulling you downwind. And if you're trying to sit head to wind, it's going to pull you backwards faster. You could, like in these drills, these pre-start drills we do, you can tighten your outhaul so that this happens less, but that's not really a realistic thing if you want one more thing to adjust. I think it's better to have your outhaul at your upwind setting when you're boat handling in the pre-start. I guess another thing I could say about kicker is I like to just keep my kicker at 90 degrees and learn my boat handling with that. But you see very good sailors adjust their kicker just before they head up because it really helps, like tighten their kicker just before they head up, loosen their kicker to help them turn away from the wind, not to accelerate. You don't want to loosen your kicker when you bear off to accelerate, but you can adjust the kicker in real time for boat handling, but I think it's just too much. I think it's better to keep your kicker at 90 degrees and then just learn how you have to handle the boat to accommodate that. Tiller angle was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Really important tiller angle. Actually, today I had a video of Anne doing a roll tack that was really a nice demonstration of tiller angle, if you can find that. But basically, so this boat is going that way, the wind is coming, the apparent wind is coming that way. If you don't bear off far enough below close hauled, when you accelerate, the boat is going to want to round up, so you have to pull the tiller towards you, which is terrible. That creates, the boat is trying to turn up into the wind, so you have to pull the tiller to turn it away from the wind. The result is turbulence off the rudder, slows you down a lot. So a lot of tiller angle is most related to angle above close hauled. So if you're really above close hauled, when you start flattening, you're going to have to wrench on the tiller. It's really not, it's terrible. So you need to scull down first. And I always talk about not fighting forces. So when you're sculling away from the wind, don't have leeward heel, don't have a tight sail. The ideal is to have your tiller straight as you flatten, or a little bit to leeward. And I think Anne's was a little bit to leeward, and it looked really nice in that example I'm thinking about, one of the last videos. If you're watching this on the day that I posted those videos. So if you have turned a little bit past close hauled here, then when you flatten the boat, the flow is going to want to attach more nicely to, that's a bent centerboard, to a centerboard and a rudder that are sort of lined up with this natural tendency of the boat to curve upwards. It's also okay to keep the tiller totally flat, totally straight. Then after you flatten the boat, to get feedback on your own, whether you had the right amount of heel, are there little whirlpools in the water behind you? If you've created little bits of turbulence by keeping the tiller straight, then you had more heel than you needed. So if you get a huge amount of heel, you attach flow more easily with tiller to leeward. So I've seen some of the best sailors, world-class sailors, like to flatten their boat with the tiller to leeward. So that works just fine. The only reason that isn't optimal is that those sailors have to turn further below close hauled, because the rudder encourages them to turn back up to close hauled again. But the jury doesn't seem to be too concerned about this turning below close hauled. I've only seen people get called a couple times. So tiller angle is further to leeward, the more leeward heel you get, and that's only possible if you're also pointed further away from the wind. Optimum flattening tiller angle is maybe straight or 5 degrees to leeward to help attach that flow as the boat flattens and turns up into the wind.